Apple's about to drop the world's thinnest tablet with the iPad Air 2. HTC is branching out to build more than just smartphones with the HTC RE, and Sony's, well, sticking to its guns with the Z3v. Last year's guns, to be precise. Also, I went up in a helicopter. All this and more, plus your listener mail on episode 117 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week podcast where we discuss news and opinion from the world of mobile technology, from smartphones to tablets to wearables and beyond, all the stuff you wished existed when you were a kid. From Boston, Massachusetts, where the leaves are golden and the donuts are Dunkin', I'm Michael Fisher. I'm joined by a man who loves his freckles and won't stand for phones that steal them, Chief News Editor Stephen Shank. Hello, sir.
It's a goddamn atrocity, Michael.
I'm not going to disagree with you. And also joining us to bring his high-tech computing experience to an HTC discussion, LOL. And because his beard is the best one this side of Phil Nickinson, or at least was, from Android and Me and HTC Source, our friend Nick M. Gray. Welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be back.
I'm very glad you're here. It's going to be fun, even though we just saw each other in the meat space. Before I continue, I want to let everyone know that our show today is sponsored by Themer. So, you just got the HTC One M8, or the Moto X, or maybe you picked up a Galaxy S5 or a Galaxy Alpha, and so far you're thrilled by its newness, but the home screen experience feels no more exciting than the phone you just had. Spice things up. Get Themer, which is a free home screen replacement app that gives you access to a bevy of beautiful home screen themes, all coming with HD wallpaper, spruced up icons, and super useful widgets. It's gnarly. And I don't say that lightly. Search Google Play for Themer. That's Themer. And we thank Themer for their sponsorship. Gentlemen, it's good to see you on the air again. It's good to be here. I feel like a great many years have expired since I last sat in this booth. I have a candle now, as our live viewers can tell. I'm, making things nice and cozy on this blustery autumn day. Stephen's hair is taking on the form of an aerodynamic fairing on the space shuttle.
Let's call it windswept. Let's go with that.
I like windswept. That's very nice. You're going to keep getting more and more compliments the more we do this show, I think, is what's going to happen. Because people just keep calling you Liam Neeson and things. When are you going to wear your glasses on the show? Ever?
My awful purple glasses?
Yeah, the ones you wore to the AT&T event in New York City.
I don't know. They're in my car. I don't know.
Oh, they're wonderful glasses. You wear them at some point. It would be great. And Nick, have you trimmed your beard, or what was I? No, okay, I wasn't lying. Your beard is still there. That's good. Good.
My beard's been here for 5 years. It's not going anywhere.
It would take me 5 years to grow a beard of that density.
Apparently, I got to start paying more attention to things. I don't know why I remember you without a beard, but anyway, none of that is important. What's important is that we talk a little bit of mobile technology. So we've got the Q&As coming in on the on the chat feed. Folks, if you're watching this live, you can submit a Q&A, and we will try and get to it toward the end of the show along with listener mail. But first, we have some announcements. So if it's all right with Jules, I'll ask him to sound the bell. Thank you very much, sir. Going to get through these very quickly. Taylor Martin has been working with the Z3 Compact. Don't worry, everyone. He is going to join us for one more podcast before he leaves forever. But today's not that day, so I just wanted to give him some plugs. He's been working hard comparing the Compact with the One M8, with the Galaxy S5, and he also has a post up about what the Z3 Compact's camera can do. So be sure to check those out at Pocketnow. The non-compact version of Sony's Xperia Z3 line, the Z3, I don't know, Big
Ass?
is, yeah, the Z3 Big Ass is about to, the full review is about to drop. The video review is up now. Tony's working on that one. And on the completely opposite side of the thing, Joe Levi just unboxed the Kyocera Hydro Life, or the Kyocera Hydro Life, if you prefer.
Oh, crap. Have we been pronouncing that wrong this whole time?
No, Joe pronounces it Kyocera, but I think we all agree that it's Kyo.
I have this nasty habit of getting a pronunciation of word that I've only seen in print stuck in my head, and it's very hard to shake when I learn this is not how you say it.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about how it's
IFA, buddy.
It's not very zone. It's but we'll get to that. It'll be all right. And finally, a piece. Adam Lane doesn't get a lot of rep in the off Windows Phone seasons, but he has a kick-ass shootout posted right now about how the iPhone 6 Plus compares to a bunch of phones. He got a hold of a, they're not all current. Like one of them is the 1M7 Another one's just a straight up DSLR camera. But he just took basically every device he and his associates could get their hands on, and went out and took a bunch of pictures. And it's really cool to see just side by side results of like 100% crops and wide shots and all that kind of stuff. So check that out. It's called Camera Phone Shootout. How does the iPhone 6 Plus compare? The link is in the show notes as always.
That sounds really cool. I also kind of want to see the montage of Adam running around with this like bevy of phones shooting all these scenes from different things, like the smartphone shootout. That could be really entertaining too.
We should have had somebody, a crew member, following him and like doing all those fancy style shots we always get from the trade shows of, the walking shots behind the guys and like pulling phones out of their phone satchels and snapping stuff. a fancy, like, non-existent phone rig that can accommodate 6 phones at once, with a trigger on it that fires all the shutters at once.
Those old-style flashes they had, where like you held it up and then you press the thing, except it has a bar with like 12 phones on it.
Right, but every phone also has like a discharge pack, like for special effects in the movies, and it fires off a phosphorus blast of smoke, because that's the only way to make that kind of thing.
Let's make it happen.
As awesome as it needs to be. This is a podcast mainly about whether it's regurgitating or reinvigorating or reimagining, and the main company we want to talk about is HTC, with this double exposure event that happened in New York City. And this is one of the main reasons we have Nick on the show. Because, Nick, how long have you been covering HTC at htcsource.com? We talked about this recently over Meatballs.
I have no clue. It's been 6.5 years, something like that.
You do
every
too
so
have
often.
a clue.
No, honestly, I gauge it by, I started it right before I started at my current job, and that was almost 7 years ago. So moving on to 7 years. That's how I gauge it. 'Cause I always forget the launch. Sometimes I go back to the first post. I'm like, what date was that?
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. I like going back to my first post on Pocketnow every so often. Just be like, oh, right. That's what I talked about back then. How long
has it been that HTC's been releasing devices under its own name? Have you been doing it since the beginning, pretty much?
No. So the HTC Touch was the first one that they released under their name, or before they were all rebranded ODM devices.
Right.
But the HTC Touch, which actually came out right around the iPhone time.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
I remember carrying the Touch in the retail days. That was a fun time. So HTC's been doing only smartphones since then, though. They went under their own brand. They're
the one tablet.
Sure, but they kind of emphasized at this launch event and in the days leading up to it that this is HTC has this kind of 3-generation story now, which was prior to this it was only 2 generations. It was like, okay, we're an ODM that makes equipment for other labels, and then we became an OEM and we had our own brand and we've been selling stuff under that. And now that a lot of other companies have diversified, or they were originally diversified and they built stuff other than smartphones and mobile technology, well, we're going to do that. And so that the HTC sort of sees this as their third act. And in the spirit of that, we have this new HTC RE. Now, this is first in the rundown because I think it's the more interesting development, but I don't know. It's up to you guys. Nick, do you want to talk about the RE first, or do you want to talk about the Desire Eye first? You're the HTC guy. Your votes carry weight in this venue.
I say we get the Desire Eye out of the way, and then we can...
Okay. All right. Then that's what we'll do then. The Desire Eye is probably the most, I think, misnamed product I've seen.
This should not be a Desire.
I completely agree. And from what I understand, I think a lot of people sort of feel the same way. This is a device that when I see Desire, I mean, Stephen, you're with me on this. You see the word Desire, and you're kind of instantly, the phone goes into that second priority compartment in your brain, right? It's like, oh, okay, mid-range, or maybe entry-level, or whatever, some variation of not flagship. But the Desire,
kind of weird looking as well.
Right? Yes. It's like the playground for HTC's more bold design moves. But that's not what this thing is. It is in the design department, which we'll talk about in a second. But let's talk specs. I mean, Nick, run it down for us. What is this thing carrying under the hood?
Well, if you're familiar with the HTC One M8 that launched earlier this year, it would be quite easy to mistake this phone for that phone. I mean, it's got the Snapdragon 801, 2.3 gigahertz quad-core processor, 2 gigs of RAM. The display is actually a little bit larger than what we have on the One M8. It's a 5.2-inch display versus 5.0. It's 1080p. 16 gigs internal storage, up to 128 gigs of expandable storage. And I think the battery inside was 2,400 milliamp.
It sounds about right.
24,
Yeah, I don't have it
23.
handy on the thing. So the
Stupid,
battery.
I should know this. Gosh.
Well, I should know it too. But the battery is not the high point of this thing, right?
Yeah, and so the specs seem what they would for this year's flagship devices, and then we get to the camera. It's a 13 megapixel imaging sensor on the back with a dual two-tone flash, and then flip the phone around to the front, and you have another 13 megapixel camera, and HTC claims it's the exact same imaging sensor. The lenses are a little bit different.
Right.
The one on the front is a little bit wider. The aperture is a little bit, or the f-stop is a little bit higher than the one on the back. But for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much the same. And this is the first time we've seen somebody actually give a true sensor on the front to kind of boost that selfie craze that we're all indulged in.
Yeah, and I think this is the first OEM I've seen, and please correct me if I'm forgetting one, guys, but we're early in the sort of selfie generation of phones, but Microsoft and Sony have been the folks who have sort of beat HTC to the punch on this, but both of them did these sort of like mid-range is being generous when I talk about the Sony the C3, C9? I don't know. Nobody can remember what Sony's selfie phone is.
Yeah,
but
the only thing that stood out about that was the front-facing flash. There was nothing else to note about that hardware.
Right, and then the Lumia 730 is, or is it not 730? It's the one I saw at IFA, and I can't remember. Maybe it's 730. I don't know. But case in point, I don't remember what that model number is because it wasn't a terribly memorable device. Like everything they announced on that we'd seen before or was about to make it to other Lumia devices in the form of software. So this is the first device where you have a really amazing selfie cam. I'll qualify that. First device from a major manufacturer where you have a great selfie cam, which is to say high resolution, and really excellent specs all the way around as well. And Nick, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but if you neglected to mention it, it's also water resistant.
Yeah, higher than most.
Yeah.
IP-acceptable, which is higher than anything, and unlike Sony phones or any other devices that Michael likes to drop in water and ruin, this has no port covers. So
that's right.
Good luck. Well, I mean, it does. It's got the expandable storage slot, so you got to make sure those are sealed up quite tight.
Always sealed,
but yeah, exactly. So, Michael, go to it. I don't know when you had your hands-on time with it before the event, if you dropped it in the water and actually tested it out.
No, they didn't let us do that. So yeah, we had some hands-on time before the event, as did you, Nick, and of course we were given the opportunity to kind of test these things out for an extended period. But I mean, extended relative to what some other people got, and so basically we used it for a day.
Now, my big question, have either of you had the chance to try out the sound on this thing? How does the audio output compare to, say, the 1M8 with these completely redesigned speaker grills? Especially with the waterproofing. I mean, I would assume that would impact speaker performance, but how does it sound?
To, right? But this isn't the first waterproof HTC phone that's had the boom sound speakers. The Butterfly J2 has them and whatnot, and the one variation of something else.
This tiny little stripe there.
Yeah, they are. They've really minimized the grills on this thing, and to the point where I thought that boom sound was completely absent from this when they first unveiled it. I was like, oh no, they dumped boom sound. This is not a good idea. But no, the speakers are in these tiny little slits above and below the display. Now, I'm just kind of talking to deflect the obvious fact that though I had this device for a day, I never, ever tried that out. Now, I'm going to blame that on incomplete software, but before we get too far...
I actually tried out the sound.
Yes. Nick, why don't you tell us what your experience was?
Yeah, I got some time with the phone, and we were talking about the hardware and the way they're hiding it behind the screen, and I was talking to Drew Bamford, one of the lead software designers, and they were saying they actually put a really good emphasis on trying to hide them away because they wanted to make the camera the main focal point of it on the design. They don't want, if you look at the 1M8, the speakers are the main focal point on the front of the phone, and they didn't want that to be the case. And I tried to push to see if this is a design key that they're going to be pulling in through other devices in the future. Of course, they wouldn't say yes or no either way. But I honestly love it. Like, we all love boom sound. Everyone who's used it loves boom sound. Compared to anything else, it's far and above. As far as quality goes, I put it next to my phone, played the same sound. I have the 1M8, and it actually sounded a little bit louder, same tone depth and everything like that, just a tiny, tiny bit louder. It could have been just my perception, but from what I understand, it has the same, the chambers on the inside are a little bit different, but it does have roughly the same size chambers, unlike the Sony phones that have front-facing speakers that don't have the large chambers, and it also has dedicated amps for each one. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was flashing back to like the Z3, which had these nice front-facing speakers, but they
sound tinny.
Yeah, they did not deliver the quality of sound of the one I made. So that's actually that's reassuring, because I was worried about that. I was like, because when you buy the kind of goodwill in the market with an excellent product like Boom Sound, it can be, I imagine, very tempting to be like, okay, well, we need the space, so we'll just make the speakers smaller and because the front still get away with it. But anyway, I'm going to wait for the full review to test that out. But I'm glad, Nick, that you were at least thinking you had less time with the device and you were able to actually get that done. So
I had like 20 minutes with the device, and I was like testing 1,000 things per second. I'm like, how about this one? How about this one?
Well, we were distracted. We were up. We were aviating. You know. I want to talk about the RE for a second here, but before we get to that, let's just talk about the features that the Desire Eye added in to this to the sort of camera suite. You have, in addition to the you've got the fusion stuff that we've seen before. You've got the say cheese thing to trigger the selfies that we've seen on other manufacturers, and you've got a bunch of that stuff that's selfie centric. But you've also got these kind of crazy, interesting modes. What is it called? Split capture is a variant on like dual shot and other things we've seen before, where you fire the shutter and it takes a shot from the back camera and one from the front, so you can put your face into whatever you're looking at. But HTC has decided that because their full res front facer and it's a full res front facer, you're not just going to be confined to a tiny little window. You're going to be as big as the shot from the back, so it's like a 50-50 split. Honestly, there's one shot I got from the helicopter of the Empire State Building and me looking at it, which I kind of like a lot. But what do you guys think about this? Because I think the better implementation is to have your face smaller, and the fact that you can't resize that, it's kind of irritating to me. I don't know. What is your opinion on that?
For me, it's a feature that I would never use. I mean, come on. I don't want to take a picture of me looking at something. I just don't care. Like, if I want to take a picture of me, I'm taking a selfie.
Looking at it. What if you're
I always look good. I know that.
Oh, yeah, come on. You got to get that beard out into the world. Go ahead, Steve.
The image you share, that's how it appears when you take the picture with the phone. It doesn't just save it as two separate images. It
integrates
side by side like that?
into a single image, like the one we've seen in the video.
Yes, so I mean, it actually has two different features. You can capture the image at the same exact time, or you can frame it differently. So technically, what you could do, like I haven't tried this. You should have tried this because you had more time with the camera. But you could take a picture of somebody else, and then you turn around and kind of put yourself side by side next to them. So you capture the back one first, and then you capture the front, and you kind of like crop the image in.
Oh, well, I did try that. That's called crop me in. I did that first.
Which is not a Samsung gimmick feature. This is not something anyone's going to use.
Yeah. No, but not the crop me in. But you know how they used to do movies where they had twins and they weren't really twins, and they would frame up the picture.
Parent Trap.
Yeah. I mean, you put two pictures side by side, and you just reframe and crop them in the middle. And I want to try that. But
was that,
I mean,
bundled?
At that point,
because we didn't have they weren't finished software. We couldn't. The software was so unfinished that we weren't even allowed to film the software until the event itself.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that feature was actually present. If it was, then yeah,
no, it is. It is. It's what you were talking about. It's just you take one picture first and then the front one second, and you could manipulate it to look like two people are standing next to each other if you frame the picture just right.
Okay.
It'll take a little Yeah, I mean, it's just me trying to imagine how you could actually use it and make it look good.
Sure, but as Stephen was saying, I mean, and as I heard a couple other people saying, like, these are the kind of things that we rip on, for example, manufacturers like Samsung for including, and it's like, yeah, these are the kind of things you use for 20 minutes out of the box, and then you never ever use them again. Yeah, despite, you get a bunch of people together who are excited about a new feature, and you can see what you can do with it, and it's cool, but I don't see myself having to, putting up with the irritation of like framing a shot and yeah, trying to put myself on someone else's shirt, even though that's like a fun thing to do.
Well, and in case in point, I mean, we were out that one night at the bar and we were trying to get a selfie with like 6 people in it. And we were struggling to get it in. We were going to do it, and then somebody at the bar was like, "You guys are trying too hard." And she said, "Give me the phone." And she took the phone and took a picture of it. I mean,
Nick, to your credit, you tried to protest, like, and I knew exactly what you were going to say. You tried to, you were about to say something
like, "But the phone's supposed to do it. You don't understand.
It's got a wide angle. Where you gonna?" She was very nice, and we didn't want to disappoint her. And she took a wonderful photo of all of it.
Yeah, it was a great picture.
Speaking of being in bars, the number one feature of the Desire Eye is one of the ones that I think is least hyped, at least for me on the selfie side, is that dual LED flash on the front. I love having a flash on the selfie cam because we got a couple shots in dark conditions that would not have been possible without the flash. And I know it's kind of whatever, it's kind of a no-duh feature, but I think it's great that they built that in. And Stephen, thank you for reminding me that Sony actually beat him to the punch on this, but I don't think it's wrong.
Well, I don't think Sony had a two-tone flash. That's nice that they have the color correction here.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so we got some good ones there. So anyway, that's the Desire Eye. It's a confusingly named product. It's going to be really a lot of fun to play with. We won't have it for a while, so we'll see when we get it.
Can we talk about the build quality for a second?
What, of the Desire Eye?
Yeah, the soft touch polycarbonate. I mean, a lot of people like the one I made with the metal finish and everything. But when I first saw this phone, it immediately took me back to the HTC One X from 2 years ago, with its soft touch white. And then with the red accents on the side, it reminded me of the red accents of the Droid DNA. So kind of a fusion between those two. And those were two phones that I really loved the design. And I think they nailed the design and the hardware on this. It looks really nice, and it, as you guys were saying, it probably doesn't belong in the Desire family.
Like,
as
I
far
wish
as
there were more color
but under the hood, it doesn't. It's a strange product.
But I mean, we all forget that the HTC Desire launched, I think it's 4 years ago. It was HTC's branded version of the Nexus One, and that was at the time, that was their premium line. And in my, hands-on article, I wrote, this is actually the first Desire in a long time that actually lives up to the name, because it's a phone that you would actually desire it.
Right. Well, I want to say this, that it is not, it's not like the One X is white, as I recall, because the white version of the One X, to me, felt more like a chalkboard. It was a material that I'd never really felt.
It was a little rough, yeah.
In terms of the finish, yeah, I think
the hair on my arm is standing up. You just talking about that?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it wasn't. I didn't scratch it. Don't worry. No,
it was just
texture
of that.
I loved it. I loved the texture. I thought it was unlike anything I'd felt before. Whereas this, I've felt soft touch before. I've just never seen, or I've seldom seen, soft touch colored like this with such attention to sort of like being hip. These phones remind me in their colors of submarine blue, or no, they renamed it like the day before thing. It's not submarine blue. It's coral. It's coral red and blue lagoon. These phones remind me of sneakers, which is funny because like sneakers are a thing at HTC. Like everyone has really nice shoes when they give presentations, or like really wild shoes.
Not the 1992 hacker movie.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I think the look on these things is unique enough to stand out, and also I like that they used whatever it is. What do they call that manufacturing technique? Not double shot, double. Is that what it is?
Double shot, yeah.
Yeah.
Double shot injection.
You pour them at the same time, and there's no seam. Even though there's a color shift, there's no seam in it, which is really cool. I like it. What?
And
Steven?
I'm sure that adds to the water resistance rating that they were able to achieve, because there's no seams throughout the device besides where the boom sound speakers are connecting and the ports for the microphone and USB port.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm looking forward to playing with it, and I think we will have some more defined thoughts on it later on. I'm glad we sort of got to that bit, but we got to talk about the Re here because the Re is the more significant product, even if it is maybe the less impressive product. So, Nick, why don't you take us through that, or Steven, if you're feeling neglected, you can take it. It doesn't matter to me. Just
Hey, you're the guys who have had your hands on this thing.
okay. Well, that's
I
what I
love
was
the idea of this, and I'm curious if it lives up to my expectations. I mean, it's going to be too expensive to be a viable accessory, but
So let's talk about exactly what it is. Nick, why don't you paint the picture for anyone who wasn't paying attention to the double exposure event?
So at its most basic level, the Re is an action camera, and HTC likes to call it or phrase it in such a way, it's an action camera for the everyday events for the people who are not active. That being said, it can do the active thing just like a GoPro. It's water resistant. It has a ton of accessories that you can mount it to a bag, you can mount it to a helmet, you can mount it to your bike, anything you want like that. There's additional accessories that allow you to put a cap on the bottom of it where the USB port is to make it additionally water resistant. I think it pushed it up to IPX7.
IPX8. It's IPX7 out of the box, and the accessories push it to IPX8.
Yeah, so I mean, it's got the action stuff down, except the way HTC is trying to go to market is to say, hey, we all live behind our smartphones all the time. We're taking pictures. We're at a birthday party. Everyone's got their cameras out. We're all enjoying the moment through the viewfinder of our smartphone or even our DSLR. It doesn't matter what it is. We're taking in the world from an angle other than being in the present. And this device, it looks like an asthma inhaler. I'll say it like that.
Sure
I mean, we've heard the jokes, we've seen the comments. It does look odd, but I have to say it feels really good in the hand when you're holding it. It's a little bit light. You would want it to be a little bit heavier, I would think, but the shutter button falls right where your thumb is on the back of the device. The second button is actually where your index finger falls, which is the slow motion trigger, and that's the only thing that you have to worry about. You press once to take a picture, 16 megapixels. Press and hold for half a second. It starts recording video. If you're done recording video, press it again, and you're done. And it has a 146-degree wide-angle lens, so you don't really have to worry about framing the shot. You just have to point it in the general direction of what you want to capture, and you're good to go. The only thing to note is it is 146 degrees, so if you have things that are stretching from side to side, actually HTC posted a picture, I think yesterday on their social media account, about the ultimate selfie camera, and it was people sitting and their legs were like to the sides, and it made it look like their legs were like 7 feet long.
Yeah, and there's supposed to be some software that corrects for the wide angle stuff if you apply it through the app. And I want to make the point that when we tried the app out, it was really not finished, and we were also probably about 30 members of the press in one room, everyone with a Re demo unit, trying to pair them to our Desire eyes. And the Bluetooth like cross pollution was just nutso. So we couldn't do it, and the software wasn't. So neither of our hands-ons are full reviews. We have to spend time with these things in a few weeks or whenever they get them to us. And actually,
this is like the nerdiest concert in the world. Everyone holding up a lighter in the air, you're holding up asthma inhalers, waving them around.
Yeah, but no, a concert is actually one of the specific things that HTC referenced because, how annoying is it when you're standing behind the tool at a concert who, I don't mind you do it every once in a while, but some people have it up there for 20 minutes recording video, and that big-ass bright screen is shining in your eyes. It's annoying. It's distracting. Or at, another thing, I think Jason McKenzie at the event made the example of his son's basketball game. This thing is much less obtrusive. This is the number one positive point I will say about the Re is that it's really, really low profile. You can hold it up. People look at it because it's like weird. It's like, what is that? But it's really small and it doesn't really grab your attention otherwise. And you can stick it in a pocket, Nick, like you said. You can get an accessory that keeps it at a prime shooting location. And it fits in a pocket nicely. It's ergonomic. It's cool. And one of my favorite things is that it has no on-off switch. Like you put it down, it turns off after a second. You pick it up, and when you pick it up, it detects through a capacitive sensor that you have picked it up.
Oh, it's capacitive? I was going to ask about that. Is this going to work if you're wearing gloves in the winter?
So that's a good point. I don't know. Nick,
I asked that question, and they said, yes, if you're wearing gloves, it's not going to work, or if it's on a stand. But as soon as you hit the shutter button, it will turn on.
Oh, okay. Well. Yeah. Oh, yeah. With a tripod or something. How's it going to know that?
Yeah. So the whole point is, as soon as you pick it up, and if you're holding it in your hand, you can press the shutter button. It captures it immediately. There's no fiddling with a power switch. But yeah, I mean, there are the limitations of you need a capacitive input to do that. So if it's on a stand or something like that, they had to have a secondary. So if it's on a stand, you press the shutter button, it'll take a half a second to turn on and then capture the image after that, and again stay on for a couple seconds after the picture.
It's funny because it got frustrating when I was spending time with it. I was like, I have to wait a half second for the button to register a shot, and it's like, I'm going to miss the moment. But then I realized that I normally walk around town when I'm not carrying my Moto X. I walk around town with the Lumia 1020, and it's like, oh man, I see a cool moment happening, and I press the shutter button, and then it takes 5 seconds for that camera app to load.
Yeah.
So this is going to either bother you or not, depending on what your normal habits are. But there's a lot of good ideas, is my point, in the RE. Another one is when you pick it up, if you're not wearing gloves, you pick it up and it flashes the battery LED at you, and it's like, oh, I'm just going to let you know what my charge level is. That's cool.
I'm not sure what to think about this from just a usability standpoint. I'm kind of buying the idea that it's a great notion to not have a viewfinder on a camera like this. You just sort of point it where the action's happening. The lens is wide enough to capture what's going on. You don't have to consider framing very much. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, I'm worried that might be limiting the ability of, like, the basketball game, the filming of the kid's game. You're doing that over a long period of time, especially handheld. I'm just picturing it's careening like 5 degrees off, 10 degrees off. It's like you're getting a motion sickness watching this, I'm worried. I wonder if there's
but that's the thing. Like, so they do have video stabilization. It's digital. But as we've seen some of their teaser videos, it is really shaky. But that being said, it's still pre-production hardware and pre-production software that we've seen so far, so it could get better. I asked specifically if there was optical image stabilization with it, and they said no.
Yeah, we asked that too.
I'm assuming it's because of the price point. It's the price point. I mean, they're selling it for $200. I'd imagine this is costing them roughly $50 to make, and they want to make a decent profit off of it. And if you add, an extra $5 to $10 for optical image stabilization, I mean, it chews up additional battery, and also it raises the price. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But there is the tripod mount on it, so if you want just one of those little mini portable tripods to set something on, or the bottom is perfectly flat and the device acts as its own tripod.
It stands up like a periscope, and it's cool in that way.
I'm worried about some of the mounting accessories. I saw some of the pictures HTC provided, and there was one showing it on the front of a bicycle. Yeah. And the whole time looking, I'm thinking, this thing is pointed like 20 degrees north of the horizon. You're going to see all the tops of the buildings you ride by, but not where you're going. I worry it doesn't have quite the same flexibility of like a full-on action camera like the GoPro, but I guess accessories could address that issue.
Well, it doesn't, and HTC they kept making the point over and over again that we don't. If you're an action guy, you should go get a GoPro. We're not competing with GoPro. So then, of course, the follow-on question to that was, okay, well, who are you competing with? Or who are you trying to reach with this product? Mm-hmm. It's not GoPro buyers, so who is it? And the only really satisfactory answer they gave was these kind of like Go Mamas and Go Daddies. Which isn't what they called them, but it's a variation on that.
The weirdest thing was they talked about that, and then on stage at the event, they had all these models come out with all the different cameras strapped to them, and they had the RE strapped to a stroller, like it was mom and dad pretending, and they had the RE strapped to their arm, and then they had one mounted on the stroller, and I was like, really? Who the heck's gonna mount a RE camera on the stroller? That being said, I know quite a few tech-savvy moms who probably would mount a RE camera on their stroller because they go out and they go for a walk and they take pictures with their kids and they take selfies and might as well record the entire event.
Yeah, see Disney World.
No, I
There
get
are
it, but
a couple
here's
weird
the
people like
thing.
that.
I mean, like it's yes, that's convenient and everything like that, but at the same event that HTC dropped the RE, they launched the Desire Eye. They announced the Desire Eye that we just talked about, and the Desire Eye, granted, it's not final software or hardware in either case, but from what I saw, the Desire Eye takes better pictures, it takes better video, it's just as waterproof, it doesn't cost an extra $200, and it's not an extra thing you have to charge and carry around.
But you can't compare a smartphone to this device. It's not going for
Right,
the
a
same
smartphone
usage.
deserves to exist, and I don't know that this does. I'm not being snarky. I really don't know that this deserves a place in the world. Now, Stephen, you seem to be able to find situations where you can use this
thing. Yeah, but I think I would use it more as a still camera than anything. I feel like the video, I'm still worried about the shakiness. I mean, clearly it has a storage, and I like it can do the 4-speed 720p slow-mo. That sounds awesome, or quarter speed.
And the
But
time
I feel
lapse.
like I'd use it more just pointing, boom, boom. Just it seems really convenient as a really easy point and shoot camera, and I feel like I could live without the viewfinder. The pricing kind of kills it for me.
Jules is making some good points in the chat that if I don't bring him in here, I'll let them. They will, self-delete, and that'll suck.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, you can go in a second. Jules says, I personally want it so bad just for the sake of having a lipstick cam and not having to fiddle with tiny controls. And he asks, does the Desire Eye take better pictures than the previous 13-megapixel BSI sensors HTC used? It's not the same sensor. I want to make that point, and that's something was the first question I asked. It is not the same sensor that HTC was using in all those phones with really crappy 13-megapixel cameras that were just off-the-shelf components. This is a totally different thing. It's a Sony Exmor sensor in the Desire Eye.
What's the aspect on it? Do you know?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
What's the what?
The aspect. Is it a 4:3?
I think it's 16:9.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think when you max out the res, it's 16:9.
Let me get sample pictures. But I mean, to your point, I don't think this is an amazing device. That being said, yes, I am an HTC fanboy. I will be buying it when it comes out. Personally, I've been on the market looking for a GoPro type device, but I've always wanted something that is not necessarily catered to, hey, I'm going to mount it to my surfboard. I want it to do additional things. And so this week I was in New York for 3 days, and I've been to New York a half dozen times, and I've got plenty of pictures of the city. So I don't want to be the guy walking around with a smartphone taking pictures every 3 seconds. But at times, I just want to snap a quick picture and be on my way. If I had this in my hand just walking down the street and be like, hey, here's a picture, snap, done. Having, let me get my phone out of my pocket, let me frame it right, let's do another one. And yes, you don't know if you capture the perfect shot,
right?
But you don't. But that's the thing, like you don't know.
Talking about results in a better photo that you can be proud of, instead of like this thing where it's like, this is sort of in the corner of the frame, but I have to live with it because I didn't have a viewfinder to frame it with.
It's about capturing memories, not making presentation quality photographs.
But that's the thing.
My memories don't tend to be like blurry and like with wrong colors. Actually, they do.
Based off of your week in New York, I bet they do. They're all blurry.
Point taken.
When you emailed me yesterday, you're like, I don't know if I invited you to the podcast already, but if not, you're invited.
I may have. Yeah. Anyway, I won't say that on the air. All right. Yes, there are use cases for it. Yes.
The question is there a market for it? That's the real question.
That is the question. I think the answer is no, and I think that they are making a mistake by making this their product, because this is their first real, okay, now we're going to branch out. We're not just smartphones anymore. We're also this.
Is this like warming us up for the smartwatch? All the HTC wearables?
Yeah.
This is not their warm-up for the smartwatch, because talking with them, it seems like they've had smartwatches that they've been working on. I mean, we've seen the video of their HTC design team, and they have a guy working on a smartwatch, and they have a prototype there on the desk. And they've been working on these for a long time. They just haven't got the product that they are happy with yet, and that's why they're postponing that. But as Michael was saying, this is their first foray into the next chapter of the company, and they want to have a product portfolio that's more than just smartphones. Because we've seen Motorola, we've seen Nokia, and a handful of other companies that have, Palm specifically, they focus solely on smartphones, and they couldn't keep the company alive on that. And HTC's been struggling. We all know that, and they're trying to say we need to broaden our portfolio with these new connected devices. I don't think this is going to be what they actually want it to be. I think they'll probably sell a couple million of them over the next year, but that's not going to be enough to help the company financially, but it'll be their way to get something new out there and start a new trend within their portfolio.
And I've seen a lot of users asking about this in the comments, and I think it goes well with this idea of HTC trying to broaden its horizons and reach more users here. Why the hell doesn't this support Windows Phone for a company that makes Windows Phone hardware?
Well, yeah, HTC spoke to that a little bit in our session because a bunch of us asked about that, particularly with regard to Zoe, which we'll just touch on. It's in 1.0 now, and it's going to be on iOS and Android, but not Windows Phone, which is a very peculiar choice for a company that makes Windows phones. And really, it's the answer is nothing new. It's yes, HTC makes Windows phones. Obviously, we can tell from the ratio of Windows Phone to Android in their portfolio, it is little more than a hobby for them. And also one that's rooted in, I think, a long and successful history between the two companies. Without Microsoft, I heard somebody say this, without Microsoft, there would be no HTC. So I think it's important to them to maintain that relationship a little bit. And so they occasionally build a Windows Phone. But the point is the user base just isn't big enough for HTC, a company with limited resources, to focus too many of those resources on it, and that's a damn shame. And it makes no sense if you just look at it. From
but
this perspective.
I'd like to question the notion that HTC is a company with limited resources. If you compare HTC in size with how many employees they have and how much money they make or annual revenue, in the U.S. they would be a Fortune 200 company.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean,
they have,
but relatively speaking,
50,000 employees. I mean, it's one of those things. Technically, it's a really large company. It's a lot larger than it's because their product portfolio is so small that we get this notion that the company is small, and that's what they're probably trying to change.
Yeah. I mean, there are other elements too, though, right? I mean, relatively speaking, I mean, how many people does Samsung have? You know what I mean? I mean, would 5 times that amount?
Samsung's one of the top 10 companies in the world.
But they're directly competing in the marketplace. Their mobile products directly compete.
Just look at Samsung Electronics. It's still probably hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, or just look at Samsung Mobile. It's still probably bigger. I wish we had the numbers for that because that's a good point you bring up, Nick. But and also their mentality, though, HTC, their mentality, their company culture, I think, is that of a smaller company, and any company has limited resources. So I don't think it's not a dig to say that HTC has limited resources. It's just that every company has to sit there and make a decision based on what they're going to support. And Windows Phone, this has been the story since Windows Phone relaunched from Windows Mobile. It doesn't have the user base to support.
And I understand that, but I feel like the fact that they have even a limited number of Windows Phone devices and they're supporting iOS, which they sell no iOS devices, is just really getting under the skin of those users who did pick up the 1M8 for Windows.
But I mean, if you look at the market strategy, the go-to-market strategy for this, they want this to be a general consumer product. They don't want this to be an HTC product, and that's, if you want to be successful in the market, it has to have iOS support, and that's 10 times more important right now. Based on market share alone, that's 10 times more important than getting something out for Windows Phone, even if HTC has Windows Phone devices.
It's interesting. If we're talking about this as a device that's kind of divorced from the company's phones altogether, then why are they releasing it such that it requires, unless I'm misreading the releases I've seen, it seems to require a smartphone to sync with and to see your photos and videos. There's no way to use this just as a PC accessor, which might even increase its utility further.
You can pop the micro SD card out and transfer the files manually if you want to.
I think you can plug it in, actually. It has a charging dock, and the charging dock does transfer over USB to a computer.
Okay.
But also, you don't need a smartphone at all. You don't need a smartphone at all. You can set it up connected to the PC, and they didn't talk about their PC software, but it will back up over your Wi-Fi network.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Back up all your pictures up to their cloud application over Wi-Fi without connecting to your smartphone at all.
That's pretty hot.
So I mean, they have some things that are a little bit different and more than what GoPro has to offer. Their smartphone capabilities, or their backup capabilities, things like that.
Hold on, the smartphone capabilities are at least equaled by GoPro. The app that GoPro has built for, by the way, I believe Android and iOS and the Windows Phone is outstanding.
But that's only for their premium devices. That's for like their $300 devices. Their new one that they did for $129 doesn't have Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have that capability. So you have to compare it then a $300 GoPro to a $200 HTC.
And if you're spending $200 already, then I don't see any reason not to spend the additional for this. It's a lifestyle question. It goes back to the question of who the audience is. I don't think the audience is that big. I don't think that these mobile parents are going to be able to carry this device.
Before we move away from this guy, I just wanted to ask what you guys think about the design. Because when I first heard that this was going to be a tube-shaped rugged camera, I'm thinking something like the Sony makes ones that are just a tube, and the lens is on the end of it. Monoprice had its own rugged camera like that, and that's what I was expecting. This right angle bend kind of threw me for a loop there. I can appreciate it, and it sounds like it's a lot easier to use than you would just be holding something forward and pointing at it, just having it in in your hand. What do you guys think, having used it?
Let me talk about this for a sec. I haven't gotten the chance to say anything good about this in about 20 minutes. So, like, the design
Stop crapping on HTC.
The design looks weird, right? In photos, it's one of the weirder looking things I've ever seen. But I think I've seen in a few headlines, it's quirky. It's unique. And it's a little endearing in its sort of almost toy-like look. It doesn't feel like a toy in the hand. But it does look like something that in an animated adventure would be like a neo-futurist sort of device.
I know what it reminds me of. It just hit me. It's not an asthma inhaler. It's the spray attachment for your sink.
Yeah, it does look like a dishwashing hose attachment. But and it's comfortable to use. It's you know how to use it the minute you pick it up, and you can see how it could fit into your life when you pick it up. For me, I'm going to have to see what the end results are from final software and hardware. But I really do think it's a comfortable, quirky, fun little device to use. The hardware for me is not the objectionable part. And by hardware, I mean the build. The form factor is not the objectionable part, even though it looks just ridiculous on video. Nick, do you agree?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as the ergonomics go, so I have two bikes. I have a mountain bike and I have a road bike with drop handlebars. And the main reason road bikes have drop handlebars is because of the way your wrists set. Mountain bikes are intended for changing direction all the time. So your hands are like this. I don't know if you can see my hands. They're, and it's for turning left and right. And the road bike with the drop handlebars are intended to going straight and for long times. So if the natural way your hand is out and close your fist, and that's how you're holding the camera. It's intended for just regular use. You don't have to hold it weird, or even how you hold the smartphone. You're twisting your wrist to hold the smartphone up to take a picture. Yeah. It's honestly, it's probably the most ergonomic camera on the market. I mean, unless there's something else that has the same form factor, all you're doing is you're just making a fist and you're holding it up, and that's it. You're not twisting, you're not turning, you're not doing anything.
Completely. It is exceedingly comfortable to use, and it feels very natural to use, yes.
Unlike nearly every point-and-shoot camera, this one's totally ambidextrous, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's
left
no
hand,
bias
right hand.
Left or right, yeah. We're going to talk about this thing some more, so I do want to move on. We're going to talk about it some more once we have a unit in hand, and it's a production unit that we pull out of the retail packaging, and we're like, okay.
You mentioned a couple times the hardware is not finished.
Right, that's correct.
What are they going to change about that? Do you know?
I don't know, but when I was doing macro shots of one of the demo units we had, I noticed some dust inside the lens cover, and I imagine they probably shipped these samples out without some final, sort of QC passes or something like that. So that's probably what that means. I highly doubt they're going to be changing any camera hardware. Okay. I think that's probably final. But we've seen the big improvements software can make, like on the first gen Moto X, the software update that was released made it change it from a miserable camera to just a bad camera. So that was a nice improvement. So I hope that similar miracles are available with this. But we do have to move on. I will look forward to it. Nick, you want to come back in a few weeks and talk Re with us when we have real units?
I would love to.
Awesome. You want to stick around for the news in the meantime?
I definitely can.
All right, let's do that. Jules, I'm going to have you sound the sound effect for news because it's time to talk about the news of the week. Thank you, sir. Stephen, why don't you kick things off with some Apple news for us, because that's all anyone's going to be talking about for a while, and we might as well give it 2 seconds of lip service.
Yeah, so after much speculation, Apple has finally gone ahead and confirmed the date for its October event, anticipated to be the launch of the next iPad, or iPads, that is coming up on October 16th, less than a week away. Probably, or almost certainly, we're going to get the new iPad Air. Everything beyond that is a little, we're not feeling so confident about. Might get the Mini, whether that's a Mini 2 or 3 at this point, 3?
Mini 3, yeah.
Or the Air Mini, they might combine the branding, we don't know. There has been some talk that might be pushed back further. The long shot pipe dream here is a iPad Pro, jumbo-sized model. We're almost certainly not getting that. No one, I think, is anticipating that. But as far as the new iPad Air goes, yes, we'll probably hear about the release of, what are we up to now?
Yosemite
iOS
on the desktop?
8.1. Yeah, there's all the Mac stuff. We're going to get a bunch of new Macs if that's your bag.
Which I'm actually looking forward to, because I think it's coming time for me to stop running Pocketnow off of a MacBook Air, or my portion of Pocketnow. So I think I'm looking forward to the Mac announcements more than anything. But
you would.
The
I
iPad.
criticized a couple times this week, telling people that you were editing video off of an Air.
Yeah, people always rag on me for that, and I'm always like, yeah, but I churn out okay content for working within the constraints I have, so it's okay. I don't mind, but no, I do mind, and I'm looking forward to stopping minding. But I don't know if I'm going to be too excited about these new Airs, but it's going to be at least nice to see it. I think we ran another piece called the iPad Air could be the world's thinnest tablet, right, Stephen? What's the millimeter-ness on this thing?
Yeah, they're saying it could shrink down by a whole 0.5 millimeter, so really noticeable over the current generation Air. I don't even know if that would be the thinnest ever. What's the current Air at?
I don't know what it is at. I'm not really sure.
Probably giving it a run for its money.
Yeah, I also don't care, because the current generation Air is totally thin enough. The Retina, the iPad Mini Retina.
You're not picking up like, oh, I'm not carrying this big thing around.
It's big. Yeah, it's freaking. I need a truck to carry my iPad around. Like, I had a first-gen iPad, and then I had a third-gen iPad. I know what heavy tablets are like. The Air is good enough for me.
And we're also hearing on the hardware side, bigger storage, or at least not smaller storage options. They're going to stick to the bigger ones. We could also see a bump in the RAM to 2 GB this time. So interesting what that means for the iOS experience, multitasking and all that. I don't think we ever had 2 GB on an iOS machine before.
On a mobile iOS machine, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool. We're going to talk about that once we know what it is. So that event is what, next Thursday?
16, yeah, Police Day.
Okay, so that'll be fresh in our minds when we do the next podcast, and that will be fine.
That could be a busy day.
It's going to be a very busy day. What are you talking about specifically with Thursday?
Rumors about the various Nexus launches have been pointing to 15th, 16th, maybe.
Oh, God, no.
I mean, you'd think we'd hear something official by this point, but maybe there's not going to be a big event. Maybe it's going to be an announcement online. They're in the Play Store. Bing, bam, boom.
Yeah. I don't want to talk at all about the Nexus 9, but I do want to talk extensively about what Motorola's bringing to the barn. So we talked about the Nexus 6 last year, and now we want to talk about this Droid Turbo, which is probably going to be coming to Verizon Wireless, or almost certainly going to be coming to Verizon Wireless.
It's Droid, right.
Right, with just absurd specs. And I don't mean processor, I don't necessarily mean memory, I mean imaging and endurance.
Yeah. So we had the user guide for this guy leak. It looks totally official, all sorts of lovely pictures in there. Didn't offer a ton of specs, but it did mention a big old 21 megapixel camera around back. You don't get a number for the front-facing resolution, but even that looks interesting. It's nice front and centered, very optimal positioning there. and this battery, which it's kind of a mystery that's slowly been being put together. So we saw a FCC listing a week or two back that appeared to be it mentioned the Motorola Quark by name, which is the code name we've been associating with this Droid device. And it named the model number for the battery, and finally someone tracked down this thing on an aftermarket accessory site. Battery looks like it's going to be friggin' huge.
3,900 milliamp hours. Is that right?
Yeah, this is beyond even the Droid Max from last year.
It is. It is the exact same size. I wonder if it's the same power pack exactly as the one in the Huawei Ascend Mate 2 4G LTE, which lasts as long as it takes to pronounce its name, which is, of course, 3 days.
About 7 hours.
Yeah, no, that phone was incredible in terms of endurance, the Huawei Ascend Mate 2 4G LTE. I could not get it to die, even when I aggressively, sat on it and just used it for all the media I could think of on the fringes of a coverage area. It would still last all weekend. So
my note for the 7 hours was like screen on time, like playing games, watching videos. That's one of the numbers I saw.
Oh, yeah. I forgot what I managed to get from it. No, I don't forget. I managed to get up to 10 hours once of screen on time on the Huawei Ascend Mate 2 4G LTE. Yeah. But that was with a 720p screen at 6 inches. What is the resolution going to be on this sucker?
I was just looking for that. I swear it's been mentioned. It's a 5.2-inch display. I
really hope they make it 1080p.
Quad HD,
I don't want them to do Quad HD. I've been using a Quad HD device that has a big battery, and it doesn't last very long at all. I hate Quad HD displays. Can I just say that? Yeah, they're beautiful, whatever.
It looks like they're saying it'll be 2K.
No.
Sorry.
We don't need this.
Okay.
But with a battery that big.
With a battery that big and a display that high resolution, you're just going to get standard endurance. If you put a 1080p display on there, which most people wouldn't notice at 5.2 inches, you're going to get a truly exceptional device. You don't have to play this game. Go ahead, Nick.
Can I burst everyone's bubble? Technically, 2K is 1080p.
Don't do it. Don't be one of those people.
No, it's
1080p.
No, I'm not doing that.
Technically, 2K is not an official standard.
UHD. Are we better now for this more difficult thing to say? Are you happier that we're... Yeah. You're welcome, commenters. Nick Gray is on your side. Anyway, this thing looks beastly. The 21-megapixel camera, it looks like if Motorola can't solve their imaging problems with software, then they'll do it with hardware.
Pixels at it.
Yeah, it just won't work either.
But this guy might not even be a Verizon exclusive. There's an FCC listing that looks like it could be an AT&T version of this. What name it would take, we don't know, but
wouldn't
very
be
promising.
And it wouldn't be...
Would a 21-megapixel sensor probably be a Sony?
Probably, because that's what Sony was using. But they were using a
20.7.
But I mean, rounding up.
They're rounding up for
21.
What's 300,000 pixels between friends?
Nothing.
Not a damn thing.
Nothing at all.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I think the thing that excites me about this is not just the megapixel count. That's not terribly exciting to me. But the fact that you put a 21-megapixel sensor on there means that you're going to devote at least some resource to making the camera experience better. You don't just slap a sensor like that on your phone and then just kind of play it down in the literature. You make something out of it. You call attention to it. And I think Motorola learned the folly of calling attention to a substandard camera on last year's Moto X when they mentioned clear pixel for every day for a month and then never mentioned it again after the reviews came out. So
they buried that so fast.
Yeah, it was crazy.
The other thing about this guy, I forgot, we're talking about the power. The manual revealed built-in Qi wireless charging support.
Oh.
And it works with that super fast Motorola turbocharger.
Yeah. Oh, this cheesed me off real hard, though, because the Moto X doesn't have Qi wireless charging, and it should. And if Verizon has it, it makes sense, because Verizon has been sort of semi-aggressively pushing Qi on people, presumably to keep pace with AT&T, who's aggressively pushing PMA.
You guys, power mat, it's still valid. No.
I want to tease something. We're a little late on this, and I'm sorry to the people at Zenz who sent us this, but I have these two Qi wireless charging plates here for review, which they're not like the consumer ones where you buy it and you put it on your desk. They're the ones that integrate into your desk, and they live under the
Oh,
laminate.
neat.
And so you can just drop your phone on the desk, and the desk doesn't look like anything's on it, but it starts charging your thing. So I'm going to do that next week after a bunch of other coverage goes out the door on something else.
How many desks are you going to ruin in the process of drilling the holes with these?
Probably about 7.
Mm.
And then I'm going to go to IKEA, and then I'm going to be a happier person anyway. Motorola Droid Turbo might be out of a tablet-sized battery. We already talked about that. The Galaxy Note Edge will be out before the month is over. What?
Well, not here, but yeah, in Japan.
In the world. Yeah, in Japan.
Those lucky Japanese smartphone buyers are getting this guy before the end of the month. Pre-orders have opened already, I believe. Possibly.
Okay. Yeah, I believe I read that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that bodes well for it getting to other markets in a relatively speedy fashion. We haven't heard much about exactly when it's going to be available. I know Canada is definitely not getting it until next year. We've heard, U.S. probably before the end of the year. If that's December, if that's November, we don't know. I'd like to believe it's November. It's coming out in Japan this soon, but no confirmation as of yet.
Roger that. Yeah, we've kind of bounced around on this thing, and we're by the way, we're definitely getting a review device, and probably it's going to come from our friends at 28 Mobile, given their geographic proximity to the markets that this is going to be coming out in. So stay tuned for that. I myself don't want to review it, but and not because just because I kind of dislike what the sacrifices Samsung's made in the form factor to accommodate this bend. Normally I'm all about bent displays, but you look at this thing in cross section and it kind of looks like an accent mark over a funnily pronounced vowel in some language that's not English. It's like not symmetrical at all. It's just strange. Nick, what do you think about this Note Edge?
I applaud Samsung for trying something new, but I am not a fan at all. I mean, the one thing that Samsung can always do is try some quirky form factor that nobody's ever going to ever buy.
Flip phones.
But I mean, someone's got to push the technology forward, and if the Edge is what we need to get some other type of device, I mean, you've seen those, artist concept smartwatches that are a complete circular band. That's an entire display. Technically, Samsung could probably put something like that out in a couple of years. If they keep pushing the technology, someone needs to push the technology to see what it does. That doesn't mean I need to buy it.
I worry, though, are we getting to this point where we're doing these once-and-done technology demos like last year? We had the curved phones. I don't see anything else like that on the horizon.
Well, we're seeing leaks of like the follow-up to the G Flex, right?
Yeah.
And the Galaxy Round is what made this possible, so I feel like
there's no Galaxy Round 2 as far as we know. There's no other manufacturers seeming to really egg on this. I guess they don't have their own fabrication and ability to make these displays on their own.
Yeah,
I just wonder if this guy's going to come back in another Note Edge. Will there ever be an Edge 2?
I mean, technically, the Note Edge is just a rehash of their prototype unit that they showed off a year and a half ago at CES. And this is the first device that they're coming out with this. And, you always have to gauge, it takes 18 months for something to go from, an idea on paper for these companies to an actual product in stores. So, they can be starting slow and moving from there. So, I mean, we saw the Round, we're seeing the Edge. Round what came out 9 months ago?
Something like that. Yeah, very vague.
Yeah. I mean, so we've seen 2 curved devices or devices with curved display technology in them within the same year. I'd imagine maybe next year we're going to see 3, maybe 4, and then ramp up from there, depending.
All right, that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah. I'm thinking you'll get more. It won't be as jarring as something like this, but they'll introduce the technology into something else that's more mainstream.
I want that over-the-top curve. That's going to do it for me.
Let's talk about what effects all of these decisions are having on Samsung's bottom line. I thought this was a good fit to have Nick on the show for, because Nick also works in finance, understands some of these numbers a little better than a lot of people, and the headlines when this kind of stuff happens tend to get a little sensational, because what's our head here? Samsung's Q3 profits sink a staggering 60% compared to last year. big news. And it is, indeed, significant. There's no question about it. But ultimately, this means that instead of making, what, $9.6 billion, the company only made $3.6 billion. I mean, that's huge year over year, and since the stock market is something that is based on future-looking stuff, that obviously is significant, but that's still an awful lot of money, isn't it?
It's still an awful lot of money, and the only reason you should actually be worried about this is if we actually had the details as to where the money is falling off from. If this is coming directly from their mobile unit that they're lacking in mobile sales, or is this coming from their television unit or their insurance unit? Samsung sells life insurance and car insurance. And honestly, that's probably where the most of their profits come from, kind of like Sony. If Sony didn't have an insurance unit, it would be out of business 5-6 years ago.
This is just Samsung Electronics we're talking about.
So it's just Samsung Electronics? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, analysts from the Wall Street Journal are predicting, we're just kind of repeating the speculation, but speculation from a nice source, that the launch of the iPhone 6 has squeezed Samsung's profits on the high end, and then commensurately on the low end, Chinese manufacturers like Xiaomi and Lenovo have started squeezing the more affordable stuff. So I can buy that. I mean,
well, and it comes to what are they pushing out? I mean, we've all seen Samsung releases a new phone every other day, and HTC used to be the same way. I mean, we all remember when HTC released 45 phones in a year, and they were all based off of the same concept, but they were custom tailor-made for specific specific carriers. Right. And Samsung keeps doing that, and HTC's kind of save their bottom line by creating more efficiencies within the company and cutting down on overhead. And maybe that's something Samsung needs to do. They've been in this massive growth stage for years, and at some point sales are going to taper off. It's not necessarily that it's a bad thing, it's just you've reached your peak and now you need to adjust your internals so that you don't start bleeding money.
I really don't like this attitude that a company, to be successful, has to constantly be growing. I mean, the market can't grow infinitely. Granted, the smartphone market has been. I mean, it's still moving up there.
Excuse me, sir. Are you a communist? Are you rejecting the notion of the capitalist ideal, sir?
I mean, isn't it enough to be making the same amount of money year after year? We don't need to see profit growth. As long as it's not losing money, I consider that to be a win.
So that's my 1950s American is so angry he's going to take his glasses.
Rabble.
I can't believe it. Yeah.
Take your glasses. Put your glasses back on. So yes, from an external's point of view, that idea is perfectly sound. The problem is these are publicly owned companies, and as shareholders want to grow their money. They don't want to keep the same amount of money.
Sure.
And so if you're a shareholder of these companies, you want to invest in something that's going to grow more than it did last year. And if this company is not going to grow more, you're going to take your money out of this company and put it into another company that's going to grow more. And this is the bad part about it. That's why there's been so many companies that have talked about going private again, buying back all their company's shares so that they can go private, and then there's not this pressure from the market. They don't have to reveal how many devices they've sold. They can go at, we can make $2 million every day for the rest of our lives and be completely happy with that, and there's no growth. That's perfectly fine. But as soon as you make it a public company and people want to make more money, that's where this criticism comes in. I would be perfectly happy with $4 billion in a quarter. I don't know what I would spend that on.
Not me. Wouldn't be able to buy enough baseball
screens, everything.
Well, yeah, and thank you for that perspective, Nick. It's important that we all keep in mind that the roof isn't falling in on Samsung here, and I think it is very tempting to sit there and say, like, well, of course, because Samsung hasn't made anything compelling in a quarter, and it's like, no, that's not how this works out. This is not a direct reflection of the fact that they opted to put golf ball dimples on their flagship. It's like this is a more complex problem than that. So, we'll see. Thankfully. See, this is why I'm happy to have you on the show, Nick, because I'm not in finance. I don't really understand it.
Well, I mean, honestly, it comes down to the same thing as why, Apple reports earnings and they were positive, they had growth, and then Apple's stock price falls because the analysts were expecting more. And so, the price of the stock had been building up because the analyst had said we're expecting this, and so the market says, oh, so their stock should be worth more. And the funny thing about stocks is that the current price of stocks is always based off of what you think the company's going to perform in the future, not what the company's performing today. So if an analyst comes out and says, in 6 months we think this company's going to lose money, stock price drops. Not they lost money today. It's we think this is going to happen in 6 months.
Right. Which is, and the converse is also true when a company says we think we're going to earn this much money, and then they come out and they say, oh, we actually earned $1.5 million more. Then wow, the price surges, and it's like, oh, great, everybody's happier now. So why doesn't everybody always just lowball it? It's probably
well, expectations right down.
But so the thing is, like, if you lowball it and you say you're not going to get as much money as you want, as a company, Samsung and HTC, they make money off of selling stocks now. So if they lowball it, their sales of their stocks now go down, or they don't increase as much. And then you don't want to make sure you highball it. You want to make sure you have that perfect number, so that you predict in 3 months this is exactly how much money we're going to make, and it slowly rises over time, rather than having these ups and downs.
Much of life boils down to is finding the happy medium. Right in the middle, where everything's perfect. Everything is not perfect at GT Advanced Technologies. Yeah, Apple's Sapphire partner has filed for bankruptcy protection, though this is apparently
scandalous.
Yeah, so these are the people you may remember, folks, who I visited I visited one of their facilities in Salem, Massachusetts.
Oh, this is the same one?
Yeah, these are those guys. I found out how sapphire material is made for electronics and other things, solar panels, but apparently this is more about restructuring debt and other things unrelated to current sort of production issues and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, and we just sort of came off some finance talk, so I just wanted to throw this in there and say, like, sad face, but also they are not going out of business. There is no word about their current production plans, as there never is, or their partnerships with other companies such as Apple or anyone else. But they're going to be around still. So
yeah, it's not a good time for this news, especially coming off of the minor upset where a lot of people were expecting we were going to see Sapphire screens on the iPhone 6, and we're getting it just on the iWatch, and even then just on some of the models. I think already the company wasn't looking too great in the public eye, and now to have this.
And we should make the distinction that GT Advanced Technologies is the parent company of the company I visited. I visited GT Crystal Systems. I do not know what the health of that company is, of that section of the company is relative to the rest of it. You can probably find it in the public releases, but we're not going to talk about that. I just wanted to say it's
I also think it's funny. This is a company that's making sapphire and can't make money doing this. This is like an alchemist who can make gold and can't find a profit somehow. They're making precious crystals. This is mind-boggling.
But to me, the comment about trying to restructure their debt, it sounds like they were actually gearing up for additional production. So it sounds like maybe they invested into additional infrastructure to take in larger orders, and they simply don't have the larger orders and the revenue to pay off that debt for additional, machines and employees, things like that.
Crucibles. And there was this talk that
it's got overhead cost.
I heard that Apple owed them like 150 some million as a final payment, and
and they were waiting on that payment still.
Coming. There might have been a reason for that. They hadn't met certain capacity levels they were supposed to in their agreement, but I guess they were really looking forward to that money, and when it didn't come through, not good.
Yeah, we've all been there. I've been waiting on millions for a little while now. Let you guys know when it rolls up. Listen, we're a little behind in the timeline, so I'm going to skip the mentions. I just want to say Google Voice MMS is now supported, and Microsoft is launching a cross-platform photo sharing service that is been announced by their research component, their research arm.
That's going to change the industry. I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, Microsoft Research has some of the coolest stuff ever that never ever makes it to market. So we'll see where any of that goes. But now it's time for Steven's weekly segment. It is new. This is the second time this week. We have Andy Rooney in the studio. This is a segment called Dial F for Fail.
Dial left for facepalm is also unacceptable.
Dial left for facepalm is a good one too. Let's alternate them. This week, folks, if you missed it last week, there's a segment about general injustice, misdeeds, and foolishness within the mobile industry. Today's topic: sad sack Sony's stateside stumbles. Stephen, I didn't attend this event. Nick, did you attend it?
I did not, no.
Okay. Well, neither of us attended this event. Adam Lane attended it on Pocketnow's behalf. I'm sure Android and me probably had somebody there, right, Nick?
Nope.
Oh, you guys covered it from afar as well. Well, it looks
that
like...
might have been very prescient of you.
I was just going to say, tactically speaking, I don't think y'all made a mistake, Nick. Stephen, why don't you walk us through what happened, because I don't understand it. All I understand is that immediately following this event, I got frowny faces from all my friends who did attend.
So Sony has been keeping at arm's length from the U.S. market for a while now. The company publicly stated not too interested in the U.S. It's really competitive. It would rather spend its efforts elsewhere, build up its user base. Then when it's a more substantial player, it would take another look at the U.S. market. And that's fine. If it doesn't want to play, so be it. But then going back several months, we've been seeing all these leaks suggesting that maybe that's not true. There were these renders of a Verizon Xperia Z2 looking phone that suggested maybe they are, flirting with the idea of getting in bed with one of these carriers, releasing a phone in the US. So when this announcement came a couple of weeks back that Sony was having a US event, we all got really excited. This is just still a few weeks past the IFA launch of the Xperia Z3, Z3 Compact, the tablet compact Z3. I don't know what order those words go in, but that's what the device is.
Oh, but it knows what order they go.
Really looking forward to big U.S. carrier news here. And we got U.S. carrier news, but not at all what we wanted, not at all what I think Sony really needed to do if it was to approach the U.S. market again with any sort of serious effort. So we got this Xperia Z3v. I don't even know if we can call this an Xperia Z3. First of all, the line between the Z3 and Z2 was very thin to begin with. And just looking at this guy, it seems to have a lot more in common with the Z2 than the Z3. So already a misfire there. More than that, though, no mention whatsoever of the Z3 Compact. And just based on what I've been seeing from commenters on Pocketnow news posts, you guys were really interested in the Z3 Compact coming out. This was going to be the compact, the smaller smartphone that still delivered flagship level performance. It's attractive. Everyone wants it. Why the hell won't you sell it to us, Sony? And weirder still, this was a pretty much Sony and Verizon only event. We are getting the Z3 in the States. T-Mobile has committed to this. Yet not a lick of a mention of it at this thing. It's like Sony's shooting itself in the foot. I could understand if it wanted to keep staying away from the US market altogether, but this weird half-assed. It's like it owed Verizon a favor and didn't really want to go to too much of an effort to deliver. And then I'm looking through the, there's a bundle deal where they're going to be selling the Z3v alongside the Xperia tablet Z2, and you get $200 off or something. I swore that was a typo when I first saw this. Why the hell are you bundling this new phone with a tablet that was launched back at MWC when you have a brand new tablet that everyone wants that's going to be coming out this fall? It's misfires on every cylinder here, and maybe my expectations were too high, but Sony, you and Verizon, you guys let me down.
So, Stephen, I like this, and I was taking some notes while you were speaking, and I'm going to play devil's advocate if you will allow me.
Please.
I agree with you wholeheartedly about the Z3 Compact. When I heard the details about the press event, including the fact that there was, I believe, an embargo governing when some of the news could go up and such, I was like, oh, well, maybe this is going to be a big deal. And maybe we'll see a Z3 Compact. I mean, that would be really cool, especially on Verizon. But we didn't see that, whatever. You said that the line between the Z2 and the Z3 is already a pretty thin one because Sony has such a quick release cycle. So, to my mind, I want to say, why not then?
So what's the problem then with the Z3v?
Indeed, what is the problem? I mean, we regarded the Z2 very highly. I continue to regard it very highly. And this new device seems to have many of the specs that the Z3 does. It just has the design language of the Z2. So is that really much of a problem?
It's not a problem. I feel like it's not going as far as Sony could have gone. I feel like it's the company holding back the idea that it's sticking with this previous design is weird, and it seems to suggest that there's some loyalty to the Z2 that doesn't exist because it has not landed on the U.S. market. I can't quite wrap my head around the logic for making this phone what it is. I mean, I can get why Verizon is in love with its own branding. It wants phones to be Verizon exclusives. But then why create this Frankenstein device that it may be a Z3 under the surface, looks like a Z2. That's not important. It really speaks to me that Sony's not taking the U.S. market seriously, continues not to, and is not giving us the phones that we want, the phones that everyone else is getting.
I will give you that.
I think there's something that we're missing here, and it's not that Sony isn't taking the U.S. market seriously, it's that U.S. carriers are not taking Sony seriously.
Well, that's the other side of that coin there. You have to be friends with the carriers if you want to be a competitive force in the U.S. market.
And so HTC for years had this issue where every device on every carrier in the U.S. was different. It was the same underlying specs, but they were all called different. They all had a different design language. And this is kind of what Sony's doing. I mean, they're tweaking the name a little bit. They put the V for Verizon in there, and the design language is tweaked a little bit from their flagship phone. And it's because Sony went to Verizon and said, hey, we really want to get a phone on your service and sell to your customers, and Verizon gave them a list of demands and said, we want this, this, and this. This is how much profit margin we want to make on it. And then Sony went back and said, this is what we can deliver based off of these demands, and that's the only way they're going to get into Verizon.
And I think getting into Verizon, I want to make that point too. That was my other thing. I mean, we've been clamoring for Sony to be on another carrier for a long time so that we could care about it because, tech folks like us aside, there just aren't that many people on T-Mobile compared to the other carriers. And T-Mobile's growing and doing a lot of great things well. I'm not taking a dig at T-Mobile. All I'm saying is it is the smallest of the U.S. four nationals. So, wait, is it number 3 now?
It and Sprint are always at each other's neck.
Yeah, so anyway.
Don't get me wrong, this is a step forward. It's just not the step that I was expecting. It's not the step that I don't think U.S. shoppers were asking for. It's. Yeah. I would have had more respect for Sony had it just stayed out of the U.S. market altogether until it was ready to go full force into it.
To go big guns and do like a simultaneous release. And
why? Well, what is HTC doing differently that it can get the One M8 on every carrier out there and Sony can't?
The difference is HTC has been making devices specific for every single one of these carriers, 4 to 5 devices.
So like it does that, and then like you do
the relationship.
You get to do the big.
Yeah. You got to bend over backwards first, and then you can decide to do things on your own terms.
I want to share my favorite bit of speculation from the comments on this piece. This is from Ben Chung. Looks pretty much like the Z2 to me, with specs to match the Z3. It's thicker and wider, which matches it up with the previous model. Maybe they had a load of body shells made ready for Verizon's Z2 launch until they pulled the plug on it.
This is like the Moto 360 rumors, the warehouse full of TI OMAP processors we got to use somewhere.
Yes, exactly right. It's an interesting story. Do we know what the release date on this is going to be?
Not at the top of my head.
All right, that's okay. I want to make it clear that we've asked Verizon for one of these. We've asked Sony for one of these, so we'll see what we can do on that one. Which is going to segue me into one of the most upvoted Q&A pieces. Unless Stephen, you have a final thought on Dial F for fail this week.
No, just seeing if we have any date here in the announcement, and no. No, yeah, October 23. There you go. Boom, boom.
Well, you leaned into the camera just then, and it gave me an opportunity to once again observe your glorious locks. And I want to say that one of the most upvoted cues from our Q&A is Thomas View saying, Stephen's hair, inspired by nature. Amen.
Not nurture.
You should have a marketing sub.
I'm trying to get like a James Trafficant style poof up here, but
I think you should keep working on it. It's good. I mentioned that we're going to try and get a Z2 or a Z3S or a Z3v. Wow.
Whatever the name is.
Yeah, whatever it is. And that leads me to another heavily upvoted Q&A piece, a little bit of inside baseball here. Do you guys plan on replacing Taylor Martin for future content? Asks
Irreplaceable.
Nikita Van Staveren. Or are you, Michael Fisher, Jaime Rivera, etc., going to do more videos yourselves? The short answer is probably both, but we don't have an announcement here. You know what the most frustrating thing, one of the most frustrating things for an interviewer or a tech reporter is to ask a question of an OEM or a carrier and to have them say, we don't comment on unreleased devices. We don't offer future-looking comment. But that's exactly what I'm saying here. So
do as we say, not as we do.
Exactly right. So thank you for asking, though. We will have answers for you as soon as we are ready to provide them. Since the Desire I meant to mention this during our HTC segment. Since the Desire I has come out, asks Tal Bamia, should companies be spending money on high-resolution front-facing cameras even though people don't generally crop or even care about the front-facing camera? It would be my argument that, and I'm going to let you guys answer as well, it would be my argument that people do care about this. We don't. I won't speak for everybody on the air today, but I don't. I don't care about selfie quality very much. I don't often take selfies, but there are millions of people out there, a significant portion of the population that really, really likes taking self-portraits and hashtagging them selfie on Instagram and doing all this kind of stuff. So this is the market segment that HTC means to address with this device. And until you've taken a 13-megapixel selfie, you know, I was sitting next to Nicole Scott for most of Frequencies, and she took one like the minute she got her hands on the device. And the sun was coming into the room at exactly the right angle, and you could see like the hairs, like you could see individual hairs like flying away in the sunlight if you zoomed in on this shot. And it was just more incredible than anything I could see from even one of HTC's older ones. They're 5-megapixel front facer on the 1M8. You know, it's.
But we're not sharing these giant pics. They come up tiny on Instagram. We blow the exposure out with a filter. We're losing all that quality.
Yeah,
yes,
on Instagram,
said,
yes.
Though,
yeah.
That being said, we're doing the same exact thing with the rear-facing cameras as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People are the way people use their selfie cams is the exact way they use their rear cams. So if people are saying I need a rear cam that's 13 megapixel, why not have a front-facing cam that's 13 megapixel?
Agreed. And
I have no objection.
HTC seems to be demonstrating that it can do that with a minimum of increased expenditure. I don't have any information.
But we still don't know the price. Yeah.
Desire I pricing. I know, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be crazy. You know, even if you're crazy enough to call something a Desire when it's actually a high spec thing, you're probably not eccentric enough to deliver it to the marketplace with a massive price tag. Unless you disagree.
I don't know.
AT&T, I'm going to say the lowest they're going to go is $150 on contract.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a $99 phone. I agree on contract, yeah.
I would actually be surprised if it wasn't a $200 phone on contract.
I agree.
My guess would be $199 on contract, yeah. Which is fine because it has the specs to back it up and
exactly
maybe the performance too. Obviously, as we've said 40 million times, we haven't, whatever. What are the chances, asks Dante Soloblood, what are the chances of seeing an S Pen on a Nexus tablet like the 9? I love the Nexus line, but I also love to draw. What do you think, guys? 5%?
Nil.
Yeah, 0%. The Nexus line has never been about resurrecting the Style Eye, and it doesn't. Nobody else is making compelling moves in this space.
Even if Samsung were to return and deliver another Nexus device, there's no way it's going to do something that would give the Nexus a leg up on its own phablets. It wants to save that active digitizer, Wacom loveliness for itself.
Well, but don't forget HTC's 2 tablets that it brought to market did have pen support.
Capacitive doesn't count.
No, it wasn't capacitive. It
What?
wasn't capacitive.
Really?
Yeah. It
Which
had
device?
with active pen with 2 buttons on it.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah.
The flyer?
Yeah,
I'm
the
to
flyer.
reconsider things.
Yeah, that was a special thing. But it had that was a stylus with a battery in it. Like I'm not gonna get it. You know, when the Surface did that, I'm not gonna get excited about that.
But the HTC's done it before, and the rumor is this is going to be a $400 tablet. So the price would definitely back up the additional hardware to support it. So I'm not going to say it's going to have it, but it might. Who knows? I'd love it. I'd love my flyer. I still use my flyer.
That's awesome. You're the only one who still uses flyer. Why didn't you bring it out the other night? I wanted to see it.
I only use it to take notes here at work. I actually use it as my digital notepad.
Well, I understand that because I only use my HP touchpad to display the time during the podcast over here in the corner. So we all have
really good use.
holdover devices. It's true. I wanted to hit up one more Q&A, but I don't think any of them are. Yeah, I'll do one more. Malcolm Barn asks, could you please talk about the potential successor to the Lumia 1520? This is a quick answer. I currently have a Note 3, and I'm tired of TouchWiz and iOS. I want to give Windows Phone a shot. I can't find much info on it. It seems like this person wants a large format device and is interested in trying another platform. And I know nothing about a successor to the 1520. I don't think we've heard anything even in the rumor mill about a large format Windows Phone device, right, guys?
Nothing.
Nothing's ringing a bell.
Yeah, I mean, there's. I'm not going to say there's confusion at Microsoft right now because I have nothing to back that up. But anytime there's an acquisition of such scale, and that followed immediately by a ton of layoffs, as inevitably always happens, there's always some kind of disruption in the product roadmap. And I think the reason we are not hearing anything is because there's no news to report. They're probably it's probably going to be a little while. That would be my guess. 1525, Jules brings up in the chat. And yeah, Jules would be willing to take up a 1530 if they ever came in. I feel like there's interest in this. Now that the iPhone 6 Plus has sort of legitimized the concept of this super large screen phone for mainstream folks who just wait to see what the iPhone does, I feel like Windows Phone has another chance to make a splash with a very large screen, but haven't heard anything. So, guys, you want to jump into listener mail? Because I think it's about time we do that.
Let's do it.
Sounds good to me.
Jules, give us the WebOS bong bong, and let's get into listener mail. I sent a bunch of mail out to you guys before the show, and we, as usual, did not select who's going to read it. So, Nick, you are the guest. You have the honor of reading the first one, and you are also free to pick any of them that you want. Why don't you tell us who you're going to read first? I bet Jules' animation has Bud going first, but I think he can probably move that around as necessary. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
I think I will go with Bud's email.
Sounds good.
It says, "Hi, Pocketnow team. Your show is by far the favorite tech podcast. Congratulations, guys. You're really good.
Thanks, Bud.
Thanks for working so hard each week to help us all enjoy mobile tech. I think that I could say that of any of the current smartphones available today, wow, I can't read today. I think that I could use any of the current top smartphones available today to do what I want, or to do what I need. Wow, really? But I haven't found one that perfectly fits what I want. If I'm going to spend that much money on a device, I'd like to minimize how much I have to compromise on what I'd like it to be. For example, the new Moto X was my pick until I tried the camera and read about the so-so battery life. My question for each of you is this: how do each of you decide what to compromise on and when buying a phone for yourself? Thanks again for the great show every week, Bud.
I will answer this one first, just to keep everything moving here, and because I like this one. I picked it because it's always a question of compromise. No matter what headline says this is the perfect device, no matter what everyone else says about no, there's nothing wrong with this thing. There's always a compromise based on your personal preferences. And for me, often I don't want to compromise on the camera. I take a lot of photos, and I want a really solid photo experience. Yet, what did I just do? I just dropped like $600 on an unlocked Moto X because, despite the fact that its camera is not very good, despite the fact that its battery is frankly embarrassing, and I mean that, it brings features to the table that I really, really, really value. Like I've said a million times before, the touchless control, the Moto Actions, the entire Moto suite, and the fact that I can get it in like navy leather with my name carved in the back and a dimple to put my finger in. Like, these are the things I value, and I valued those combined pluses so much that the big negatives of the camera and the battery life I was fine with. I became fine with. So, for me, the short answer is it always changes. It depends on what the good stuff about the device is. That's my answer. What about you guys, gentlemen, either of you?
I find the things that people complain about with phones, like talking cameras, battery life, even when they're poor in comparison to the rest of what's out there, they tend not to bother me that much. I could live with a 5-megapixel camera for the rest of my life. I mean, even the worst smartphone camera is good enough for my needs. Same with battery. I rarely find, I mean, I'm not the heaviest smartphone user in the world. I keep it on me, but I'm not constantly checking Facebook. My screen on time is probably a lot lower than most users. So I rarely hit below 60% at the end of a day. So even the crappiest battery isn't going to make me forget about the phone. So I put a priority on things like price, availability of software updates. It's driven me to Nexus series in the past. I don't know if that will continue because I might want to reconsider things if we get a 5.9-inch screen. But you guys have to consider what's the most important thing to you. And for me, that's probably value primarily. After that, it's a weighing game of priorities, but it's hard for me to find one thing that's going to ruin a device, such that I'm completely disinterested in it.
For me, I would have to say it comes to fit and finish and software experience, because I typically buy a device, I use it at least 12 months, and I want a device that I can show off to my friends and be proud of. That's typically the reason why I steer clear of Samsung devices. LG's come up a lot the last couple of years. They used to be just as bad as Samsung, but their fit and finish has come up a long ways. But that's where I think HTC, on the Android side at least, shines above the rest. I mean, the HTC One M8 is nearly impeccable in design and finish, and their software actually goes along with it. They've completely reduced the lag. It's one of the fastest Android phones I've used as far as interacting with the interface, sometimes even seeming faster than a Nexus device. I don't know if that's placebo effect by using it so much, using Sense versus other custom OSs, but I can't stand Samsung software. It's just someone handed me their S5 and they had customized it how they liked. But I was like, the first thing I would do is use a custom launcher on this phone. Like, I would have to customize the crap out of it. Yeah. But I love taking pictures, and I take a lot of pictures. But we all know ultra pixels are not the best in the world. But I'm happy with it. Even though they're not the best pictures, it's enough for me. So camera's not really the priority, but it's how the phone looks and how my interaction with the phone is. I need something that's going to last a year and that's not going to drive me crazy.
So, Nick, you provided us a nice on-ramp into a small segue into the next piece of listener mail, which I will read. Thanks again, Bud, for your mail. This is from Ganesh S. Hello, Pocketnow. It's Ganesh from India. I was a little surprised to see Adam Lane's smartphone camera show-off article. It was an excellent piece, and I hope Pocketnow keeps doing them. Me too. Now to the surprise part. Michael always tells us that HTC One's cameras are good enough for consumers, but Adam proved, I'm putting quotes on proved, they weren't there in the email, with his snaps that HTC's camera is worse than a low-end Lumia! Exclamation point, exclamation point. So is HTC right in using subpar cameras for its flagship in the past 2 years? And how much does Pocketnow gives importance to style rather than substance? Am looking at you, Michael, smiley face. So yeah, we've said a lot that we were disappointed. If you go back and look at the comparisons between M7 and M8, I said straight up that I was disappointed there wasn't more of an improvement in resolution or performance. We've given HTC some flack for this. We're not, yes. I still stand by the fact that based on everything we've said in the show, in this episode and probably the 116 before it, people in the regular consumer space do not expect the same level of camera quality from their smartphones that we do. It's not that they don't deserve it, but on the whole, I don't think they expect a high level of quality. Generally, if it looks good on the screen, they're going to be happy with it. And if it performs well in low light, which the One M8 really does, then it'll do fine for most people. It'll even impress some people. So, but no, I like these pieces too. I think it is really cool to have a great all-around shooter. Nick, like you just said, no, ultra pixels aren't the best things in the world, but as we covered in the previous email, what compromises you want are going to be governed by what priorities are important to you. And I'm able to live with the One M8 camera just fine, even though I also carry a Lumia 1020, as I said before, and I'm used to those amazing pure view shots.
It's all about the priorities, and I think this is interesting talking about the proving, quote unquote, which is better. Even if some things aren't as good as one camera on another, if it seems grainier, maybe autofocus struggles a little. There are other aspects that factor into how the overall camera experience is than just the image quality. What's the software like? Is there a hardware shutter button like on the HTC Eye here? These things matter as well for how it affects you on a day-to-day basis, and that doesn't always come off in just a one-on-one comparison of still images.
Yeah, and so like I read that listener mail piece beforehand, and I had to jump into the story that he did and looked at the pictures. And yes, the HTC One M7, which was used, isn't the best smartphone as far as for pixel peeping. I mean, blowing up to 100% resolution, no. But when was last time you blew up to 100% resolution and looked to see if it was grainy and if there was color distortion or color bleeding between, you know, different areas? My wife's a professional photographer. She never does that. Like, the only time anyone ever does this is for smartphone comparisons, and that's, I don't know what else you guys do on your day-to-day lives, but I can imagine
something to complain about.
I'd imagine you were not pixel peeping on a picture. And so this is what's ridiculous for me. It's all about, you know, as you said, it's about the experience for the camera. You know, does it take 3 seconds to load up, or does it take a half second to load up? When you take a picture, do you have to take 3 pictures, or can you just take 1 and be happy with it? And that goes into the overall camera experience. And HTC's image quality isn't the best, but I think as far as camera experiences, they're one of the top ones out there. So it's, you know, kind of that balance of, you know, what's more important? Is it pixel perfect picture, or can I just pull my phone out of my pocket, snap a picture, and be on my way without having to be there for 3 minutes trying to get a better one?
Good points. Good points all. Thank you for the email, Ganesh. And Stephen, you want to take us home with the final piece here?
Sure. Arjun PC writes, hello. I'll try to keep my question short. Do you think that Gapgate is the reason the Note 4 is not rated for IP67 protection? What is the one feature that you can't live without in a smartphone? Also, goodbye, Taylor. You'll be missed. We'll miss him as well.
Womp, womp, womp. Sad times. Yes, Taylor, you will be missed. That is sad. He's going to be on the show before he goes again. Yeah, Stephen. Well, I mean, I can answer this because I asked Samsung about it recently. Do you want me to?
We already have an answer. I would just assume that this was never something that was in the running for the Note 4. The stylus seems awful extra holes on the phone. I know they don't go all the way through to the interior, or they shouldn't, but it seems like making it waterproof would have been, 1, more trouble than it was worth, and 2, not really in line with the sort of use cases the Note's going to see. This isn't really the same active, everyday phone. This is the goes in your pocket, taking notes at a meeting phone. I don't think that there was ever a demand for it there. I don't know.
I agree. I don't think it's the right segment for it, and also when I asked, the thing was it would have added size and weight to a device that is already large. Right. So, you know, there was some question about whether or not it would be useful and whether or not people would care enough about it. And I don't have data on this particular thing, but I feel like the S5, for all the value I place on a waterproof phone, I feel like the S5, that's like the thing people just don't even care about. Like, I feel like you buy the phone, you drop it in your beer once at the bar as a party trick, and then, you know, it doesn't really come up that often until you inevitably drop it in the toilet. But by then, it's been 18 months with the phone, you kind of are over it and whatever, and yeah, you're happy that it saved itself, but it's not something you're going to necessarily go bragging to your friends about because it's already time to care about another phone. So it's a really hard feature to make sexy, I think, even though it's such a cool feature and I love it so much. But I understand the counter-argument.
It's more insurance than necessarily a feature. I can't imagine many people are using these for underwater photography or anything that really makes it stand out. It's just, if it's there, your phone gets splashed, maybe it won't break this time. That's nice, but I don't think people are depending on this regularly.
Yeah, and I think the comment about the size, you know, you have to make it bigger in order to add these features, and, you know, whether that's a little bit thicker, a little bit wider, who knows, but the size of the device dictates how you use the device. And you don't use something, you wouldn't take a tablet, you wouldn't expect a tablet to be waterproof, though, Michael, I think you've tested some waterproof tablets and you love those.
Yeah, and they're freaking awesome. Yeah, they're great.
But so, I mean, for review purposes, hey, let's take a tablet into the shower and watch a video while in the shower. Hey, that's nice, but in real life. Would you ever do that?
No, but I would take a tablet to the pool and read with it, and I would take a tablet to the beach. I've done that. You know what I mean?
Do you guys remember there's some preposterous, I want to say it was like a T-Mobile store in Europe that set up a display with models showering in the front window with whatever the latest
that was with the Z2
was. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that when I think Joe wrote an article about it back when Joe was experimenting back in his let's make every headline photo have a beautiful woman in it phase, and that suited him particularly well. But we stopped doing that because, hey. Anyway, listen, I've had a complaint on Twitter I need to address right now. It's a very serious matter. On Twitter.com, I've been taken to task by a friend of the show, Dustin Early. He said my Q&A question was one of the most upvoted ones, and you guys just blew it off. Wow.
Dustin.
What we can do, man.
Important question. Who spends the most time on their hair every day? Dustin Early. Thanks a lot, buddy. I think for this show, it's got to be Steven. I mean, Nick, I imagine you roll out of bed looking that way, and it looks great already. I mean, look at this. Look at this. So natural.
Actually, I have a confession. So I went to New York last week, and I cut my hair 3 days before I went to New York, and before that, it had been 3.5 months. And so my hair was unruly. My wife came to me and said, I've never known you with longer hair. Can you grow it out? See what happens. I was like, my hair turns into a mess. So before last week, I was spending 15 minutes a day in the mirror trying to make it look not good, presentable.
Just presentable, right?
Just presentable. Yeah. And finally I was like, screw this, I'm cutting it all off.
Well, I'm in the opposite position. I got a haircut before I came to New York as well, but I just did it just regular maintenance, and they went too short as usual because I don't know how to communicate with barbers when they're doing it. And then I showed up in New York. I just felt like half of my personality was not even there because I was losing so much volume up top here. But it's all right because Steven was there to fill in the gap, and we've already given him so many compliments. We're not going to do it again. He's got skeptical face on. Like I'm going to say something else.
I have not had this cut in like 2.5 months. I spent maybe 30 seconds. I put gel in. I pushed it up. Before the podcast came on, I pushed it down. That was it. I'm not spending any time on this.
These are the secrets, folks. These are the pressing matters that you upvote in the Q&A. And with that being said,
minds want to know.
It's probably important that we get the hell out of here. Nick Gray from HTC Source and Android and Me, thank you for coming on our show even after I failed to keep in regular touch with you in New York, and you had to yell at me from a park bench as I walked by. I'm sorry, friend. I want to tell you in front of everyone that I'm sorry.
I blame the Twitters.
Thank you for blaming
You missed like 3 other conversations with other people like that, too.
I sure did. And, a big apologies to our friend at HTC who I meant to invite out for drinks, and then I had the similar problem. Communication didn't work. I'm not good at communicating. You have to find me in the meet space, and then we just go out right then. No plans. Plans are horrible. A note on music, listeners. Our transition track is called Radiation. It's a ringtone you might recognize from some Android smartphones, but it's also a full-length song by Ali Spagnola, an artist who once stopped by our podcast and one with millions of fans around the world. You should be one of them because she continues to be cool. Visit her YouTube channel, youtube.com/AliSpags, and her website at alispagnola.com, both of them linked in the description below. That's going to do it for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly, which is produced by Jules Wong, a.k.a. Green.0 on Twitter. He's more than a producer. He's a man who met the mayor of Boston. Good for you, friend. Also, be sure to find the hosts on social media. Steven will fight for your freckles at Steven Schenk, StephenSchencK. Nick stays on top of the cuddle pile news at Nick M. Gray, NICKMGRAY.
You still have to
alternate between belly aching and hootin' and hollerin' at Captain Two Phones. Captain, the number 2 phones. No, Nick, I will never, ever explain. #CuddlePile. Pocketnow itself is also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Google+. And if you enjoy the podcast, we sure hope you do, help us grow our audience, please. Leave a review on iTunes or wherever podcasts are heard. As always, we thank you so much for listening. We thank our sponsor at Themer, and we'll be back with more Mobile Tech Talk next week.